Hey friends, and welcome back to So Aldo. For today's episode, I am going to show you how to make a simple gathered dress. So the first thing I did was join the side seams and the shoulder seams. I also did the same thing on the sleeves. I will be using my serger for this project, but you can use your sewing machine if you like. Right after that, I am going to finish the neckline. I have a separate tutorial on how I did this. Right after that, I went ahead and attached the sleeves. I basically just put the sleeves inside the armhole, match the inseams, and pin it all the way around and serge it all the way around. You have to make sure that the right sides of the fabrics are facing each other. Now it's time to work on the bottom of the dress. To figure out the measurement on how much fabric you will need, simply just going to double the fabric or double your waistline. But basically, the more fabric you add along the waistline, the more the dress is going to be voluminous or full. And of course, the skirt is going to be heavy. And then when you attach it on the bodice, it's going to stretch out the bodice a little bit. So you have to compensate for that stretch that the bodice is going to do. Idea that I am going to be doing here is I'm simply going to gather the panels right along the edge so it will fit the waistband. By the way, the waistband is about 4 inches wide and it is the length of my waistline plus seam allowances. I'm going to do a basting stitch right along the edge of the fabric. As you can see, the fabric is really soft. The machine is gathering it for me already. Then I'm going to sew another basting stitch right below where I made the first basting stitch. I'm doing it like this so the gathers will stay in place and it will give me a much better looking gathers. Show you the difference, this is the one that has one basting stitch. As you can see, it's not as full, and then this is the two basting stitch. I am going to lightly gather the skirts or the panels to match the waistband. And then I'm going to match the side seams and sew it closed. And this time I use my sewing machines just to show you that you can also use your regular sewing machine for this, and you actually don't have to search because this fabric doesn't fray. And then I'm going to sew the waistband. I'm doing it this way because I want to add like extra support to the waistline because the fabric or the skirt is going to be heavy. So I folded it in half, closed the seam and trim it off. And then I realized I have two side seams on the skirt. So what I did was I sew a fake side seam on the other waistband. So I will have a uniform look when I attach the waistband on the skirt. I'm going to place the waistband inside the skirts so the right sides of the fabric should be facing each other. So I pin the side seam first so they will match, and then I'm going to pin it all the way around. And then I'm going to sew it all the way around. I will be using a stretch stitch this time because when I put on the dress, I want to be able to stretch the fabric and the threads will not break. If you don't have a stretch stitch feature in your sewing machine, you can use a narrow zigzag stitch. And if you find that the gather is kind of bunching up, use a pin to push it under the presser foot. It will help you to sew it straight and not all over the place. And if you notice, I also serged the raw edges on the side seams right here. That is optional. I just want this dress to look professional and look finished. Right after that, I am going to remove the basting stitch so the skirt can actually stretch. Here, my friend, you have a skirt. It could be a maxi skirt or a midi skirt, totally up to you. But basically, you have a finished skirt right here. All you need to do is hem it. But because this is a dress tutorial, I'm gonna keep on going and show you the next steps. And here I am notching the front of the skirt because it's kind of hard to tell which side is going to be the front or back because they look the same. When I pin the bodice later on, it will be much easier for me to figure out which side is which. I have mentioned earlier that I'm going to take in the waistline a little bit since I am not going to be adding some darts. I mean, you can add darts if you like, but for this look, I am not going to. Just going to simply take it in from the sides, so about 1 inch on both sides. I am going to sew it from the waistline just because I have much more control because there is more fabric on the top than on the underarm seam. After that, I trim off the excess fabric and serge the raw edges as well. Now it's time to attach the bodice on the skirt. So I'm going to place the bodice inside the skirt. I'm going to match the side seams and pin it all the way around. Be sure that the right sides of the fabrics are facing each other. And then I will sew it all the way around. I'm also going to be using a stretch stitch, and like I mentioned earlier, you can use a narrow zigzag stitch. Now it should look something like this. As you can see, it looks so pretty and it has a flat inset waistband that I absolutely love. Now all I have to do is finish the hemlines. I will be using my cover stitch machine for this, but you can go ahead and use your regular sewing machine. Just use a stretch stitch. I pressed in the seam allowance and I will be using a chain stitch. Will be just one row of stitch instead of two. So I went ahead and sew it all the way around and the chain stitch looked like this. And I'm just going to trim off the excess fabric